Ciao Filippo.
Ciao Simone.
We are so happy to have you here, really. And as a disclaimer, we are friends, but not only friends. We have this huge passion for sharing concept about longevity.
That's right.
And I think you share the same mission of Clinique La Prairie, which is helping and inspire people to live a longer, healthier, and better life. And this is what you do constantly. I was with you like 2 weeks ago. Fantastic event that you did in Riccione. You brought 1,000 people in a room for 2 days to talk about longevity. I don't know how you do it, but in any case, I saw that the people were staying there for 2 days, just listening to a lot of incredible content. So let's start from your story. How did you get to this? How did you get to being able to bring 1,000 people in a room to talk about longevity?
Oh, that's a long story. Well, let's say I had this very interesting adventure and very interesting experience. Now it's several years ago, of becoming a medical doctor for the European Space Agency and working directly on the health of crew members of astronauts for several years. A little bit later, together with my wife, she was a psychologist for the astronauts. So, we grew up in this environment, which is amazing. You learn tons of things, you travel around the world, work with scientists, but also being very, very operational. So it's a hands-on activity. At the end, astronauts need results, Yeah. And at that time, I wasn't interested in aging. I was coming from sports medicine, so I was a performance type of guy, of doctor. But one of the biggest problems astronauts have is this problem of accelerated aging. So that's how I got interested in the topic of aging, in the topic of countermeasures. So what do you need to do to slow down aging? And then, the whole thing brought us in the years to develop a big community. And that's how nurturing this community with content, then that's how you bring people in a room for 2 days to listen what longevity is about.
So in fact, we can learn a lot from astronauts, right, in terms of aging. You were just mentioning, you told me 6 months in the space is like equal to 10 years of aging in the real life.
Yeah.
So basically, you as a doctor, your objective was to find a countermeasure, not to make astronaut aging so fast, right?
That's right. So if you stay in orbit for several months without a countermeasure program, so without, the interventions that doctors prepare for the astronauts, which at the end of the day are based on nutrition, physical exercise, stress management, the stuff that we need to do on Earth as well. But if you don't do that, then yes, 6 months is more or less 10 years on Earth, especially concerning the musculoskeletal system, which of course is the system that is more affected by the absence of gravity. It's not the only problem astronauts face: radiation exposure, stress levels, desynchronization of circadian rhythms. So there are many aspects that are very interesting for health of people on Earth. But I would say the muscular and bone response is one of the strongest points. And, working with astronauts, you realize that actually you don't lose muscle because you age, but you rather age because you lose muscle. So that becomes really an important aspect, muscle as a metabolic and endocrine regulator. This is a key aspect for longevity.
And that's why today you are still focusing a lot on muscle.
Yeah.
And this is one of the key messages to give to people, right?
Yes, and I have to say that as a medical doctor, I think we have been very shy in suggesting muscular exercise to people. Doctors have focused for many, many years only basically on cardiovascular exercise, which is okay for mitochondria, for your vessels, for the heart, for the lungs. But for the muscles, it doesn't really do much. Rather the opposite. It can even, be a contributing factor to catabolism in the muscle. So today, and it's good that it's this way, finally. Many experts are now suggesting to focus a little more on, weight training or muscle exercise to maintain the muscle mass throughout your life.
Coming back to the science of longevity, we were sharing yesterday a kind of joke. I wrote a lot about the hallmarks of aging, which is this first study which came out, which is analyzing why we age at the molecular level mainly. But then we are always asking ourselves, okay, and then what do we do out of it? While your approach is very practical from this point of view, you want to give people really guidelines of what to do to stay young and not to age, right?
Yeah, I think the research aspect around aging and longevity is extremely important, and of course the cell and intracellular elements are going to give many answers in the future. But the problem is, what are we going to do now? Until these answers are not completely clear. Aging, if you talk with scientists, aging is most likely one of the most complex issues science has ever faced. So I believe it's going to take still a relatively long time to understand completely the pathways of aging, and even a longer time to find ways to regulate these pathways from a cellular and molecular perspective. So in the meantime, what are we going to do? Because the issue of people aging with many chronic diseases is an urgency, it's an emergency now, not in the future. And so I rather, stick to concepts that maybe are a little older, if you want, but are still very valid. I see longevity as a fitness issue. Very simply, we cannot divide the aspect of maintaining a high level of fitness throughout your life, which, by the way, is connected, obviously, not only with lifespan, which is, to my mind, not the most important issue, but with healthspan.
Sure.
So what we want to obtain really with this new field of longevity medicine is that people age healthier, okay, stronger, fitter. And for this, we have all the recipes already there. We need the new inputs from the world of research. Of course we do, yes. But in the meantime, from a practical level, we have to stick with what we know, and we have to do it. And for me, the biggest challenge is exactly this. Take nutrition, exercise, and stress management. Well, if people would really do that systematically, we would change the world. The problem is we know all that, but people don't do it.
Yeah.
And so the real challenge
let's go back to why people don't do it later. I would like to stop 1 second, Filippo, on what you just said, which for me is very interesting in our field. A lot of people talking about the lifespan, we're going to live forever. While the main issue that we have, we know that we live 7 years in average with at least 2 or 3 comorbidity at the end of our life.
Yeah.
So which means that you cannot perform the way we would like to perform. Why there is not so much focus into lifespan and we don't talk about healthspan? We should be our priority now.
Well,
it's a question of marketing, maybe.
Can I be honest? I think it's not sexy enough.
Yeah.
So it's very sexy to speak about the potential immortality or living extremely long lifespans, and not because, you work out, you eat regularly good food, but because there's some magic secret pill that will provide you this effect. While the other approach, it's much more personal responsibility. Is what I say to people is, actually, there's nobody that can claim to have some method that extends a human lifespan at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so but there are several things that can improve health span, but those things are, they really depend on the choices of people and on taking responsibility of your health and start changing your daily habits. And this is much harder than just dreaming we're going to have a therapy that will make us immortals. Yeah. And I'm not saying that this could not happen. I don't know. I simply don't know. What I am, again, because I'm operational, I worked with astronauts, with elite soldiers, with athletes, and for me, it's the pragmatic part. I don't know if this will happen. So what am I going to do now with the knowledge I have available today?
Yeah.
I can dream about molecular interventions, but in the meantime, I'm going to work on my VO2 max, on my muscular strength, sure, on my insulin resistance or sensibility.
And supplements for you are important in this protocol, right?
Supplements are very important. And because I believe so much in supplementation, I also believe very much in personalization in supplementation. So because supplement for me work, but then it means if they do work, then I need to know what should I suggest to you and to me and to everybody else. So it needs to be personalized. It cannot be just guessing.
Personalization, it's one of the key philosophy of Clinique La Prairie, and this idea of personalization is something that we share I'm always saying, they're always asking us why you don't do big center with like 100 room and a lot of people coming. And I say, if you have more than 50 clients, whatever infrastructure you put in place, you cannot personalize.
Right.
As you know, we give a lot of importance to the assessment part, the diagnostic part. We believe is the starting point of every longevity process. You are sharing this idea of the importance of personalization, right? You just said yes.
Well, absolutely. Especially if you want to move, let's say, away from general inputs that are valid basically for everyone. You know, it's difficult to find somebody. Well, it's not. It's, you know, even on general things. I was about to say it's difficult to find somebody that doesn't benefit of increasing vegetables, but it's not true. If you have some gastrointestinal problems, it might not be the right strategy even in that case. So, but let's say if you move away from the general recommendations that we all give to the general population, okay, then yes, personalization is the key. I mean, I need to understand who you are from a genetic perspective, from a biochemical perspective, from, you know, every aspect of who you are, including the psycho-emotional part, you know, to understand how I can really get you involved in this program. You know, the P4 medicine approach that has a preventive, predictive, personalized, and participative medicine. I think it's a very valid idea. You know, so people need to get involved, and they will have to live the program that you provide every single day. So you need to understand the emotional part and, you know, the obstacles they find in their life. So yeah, personalization is at the basis of everything.
Is medicine going in this direction of the 4P? It's except places like us, but what you do, is medicine going into prevention? Yes or no?
It's difficult to answer this question. You know, it is very difficult with limited resources to fight two wars. And medicine is fighting two wars. On one side, there's a huge number of people with chronic diseases and acute manifestations of those chronic diseases, and these people have to be cured, okay? And on the other side, we should work on the change of lifestyle of the population, because we're becoming better and better in curing those diseases. Mortality rates are you know, reduced for many of these diseases. But at the same time, the number of new cases is not changing, or it's rather increasing. So it means that there's a paradox here. On one side, there's a medicine that is becoming more and more powerful, but on the other side, our lifestyle is not only not preventing, but it's provoking diseases. So fighting two battles with limited resources is very, very difficult. So to be honest, I think, again, to be pragmatic, I think the preventive part is going to be much more on the shoulders of people in terms of responsibility, of choices, of habits, and also of financial investment.
Right. So you say, in fact, that the worst mix where we are today is modern medicine plus the wrong lifestyle, right?
Well, yeah, because it creates a situation in which we become better in curing diseases, but also this curing diseases better is costing more and more, okay? But if we don't intervene at the basis, so at the root causes of these diseases, this whole thing will never end. You know, we'll have to invest more and more, become better and better, more and more, better and better. But at the end, the number of new cases is not decreasing. So it's a big paradox, you know. And again, I think this is not 100% the responsibility of medicine. I think what we need to change is this idea that we are not responsible for our health. We are. You can like it or not, but we are responsible for our health, and it's our duty to take care of this body. You know, that's the only thing we have throughout our life. And it's funny to see how many people are slow in understanding the importance of this, you know.
Yeah. Question of mindset, we could say. So let's move to the subject of mindset. By the way, you have a book which is coming. I don't know if you can say, but you have a book which is coming out of mindset.
Yeah.
I really hope you're gonna translate it in English, so everybody who is listening to this chat is gonna buy it. And I think one of the points which are more fascinating of what you do is this focus on mindset. Because me and you, we always say that if you stop whoever in the street and you ask, these people, if they know that they need to do 10,000 steps, move more, go to the gym, they all say, of course. Of course, I know.
Yeah. The majority
The
would say.
majority, they would say. So the information is not the
Yeah,
problem.
no.
The question is why you don't do it, right? So this has led you to focus much more, and we have shared the stage in few conference where basically 2 days of conference on longevity, nobody was talking about the mindset, and you brought the subject on the mindset on stage. So why mindset is so important?
Well, because again, as you say, I mean, the problem is not that we are lacking ideas or scientific, approaches to improve our health. We're not lacking them. We don't know everything about aging, as we said before, and that's okay. Science will go on, and we'll understand more and more. But the problem is, why is it so difficult to apply the things that we know? And this has nothing to do with scientific knowledge. It has to do with the mindset of people. It has to do with emotions. It has to do with what is regulating our behaviors and our choices, And in fact, I usually speak about three main aspects that are somehow responsible for this problem of people not being able to apply these things, One is called temporal inconsistency. So it means we have a very, very difficult time in empathizing with the future version of ourselves.
Right.
So it's difficult for us to understand that our future is built on the choices I make today. If you talk with somebody 30 or 40 years old and you say, well, if you go on like this, when you're 80, you might have high blood pressure. It doesn't ring a bell. I mean, we'll say, yeah, I know, but then it's going to go back to the old habits. Then there's the issue of delaying gratification. So also here, it is a very common problem. We are programmed from a neurobiological perspective to give preference to immediate pleasure than to long-term benefit. And so, we live in a world in which we are surrounded by options of pleasure, temptations of all sorts. And so that's very difficult because our brain wants that dopamine and doesn't have the strength to say, yeah, but what happens if I get that dopamine every day after 30 years? Will I have a problem? It just, we don't make that type of assumption of we don't focus on that aspect. And the last aspect is fatigue. So it's really mental fatigue. Because the prefrontal cortex that is leading our rational thinking is a beautiful machine, but it's very expensive and it burns a lot of energy. So when you are energy rich, you are capable to link your behaviors to your rational brain. But when you are low in energy, that mechanism doesn't work anymore, and the brain goes into automatic pilot. So more instinctive responses. And so again, you fall into this thing that you shouldn't eat that cookie, that ice cream, or drink that glass of wine, but you can't. So personally, I think that the idea that you need the discipline, that you need strength, doesn't really work that much. Motivation, these are aspects that last maybe a few days, but then they don't work. So if we understand how habits are built, and we understand that habits are built and grow on gratification, we need to understand that if we try to substitute constantly immediate gratification of all sorts with discipline, giving up what you like, sacrificing yourself, it's never going to work. So, I think neurosciences are giving a lot of information today on how to work with your brain and not against your brain, and how to plan, for example, gratification within a health program in order for the person not to feel this weight of the sacrifice, not giving up everything that you like, for example, working on really small steps. So there are many techniques about this.
And so habits, you were talking about habits. No discipline can last a few hours or a few days. You need to build habits. Can you tell us more about the habits?
Yeah, I think that very frequently we misunderstand that the mechanism that builds habits, which is called the habit loop, is the same with bad habits or good habits. So it's still the same basic neurological response. which it has 4 stages, basically: the stimulation, the desire, the behavioral response, and the gratification. And the gratification is the element that pushes you to repeat the behavior. So if we say that healthy habits need to be repeated, okay, for example, physical exercise, but there's no perception of gratification, how should it become a habit?
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, human behavior is regulated by the attempt to find pleasure or the attempt to move away from pain. These are the 2 basic elements that regulate any human behavior. And so it is very difficult if the emotional perception of a health program is pain, sacrifice, discipline. It's very difficult for a person to stick to that program on the long term.
So you introduced some of the questions which are like coaching questions, like already what you were saying, and you created, in fact, a method which is called like Ongaro Method, Ongaro Method, we could say in English. Which are essentially the elements of your methodology?
Well, let's say what we try to do is to bring the techniques and the art of coaching, okay, put it together with the neuroscientific knowledge of how the brain works, how habits are formed, and use it to help people change lifestyle. So this is the idea of our approach. We haven't invented anything. Everything that we do is based on stuff that is published in the scientific literature. So we haven't invented anything, but we try to put it together.
The change process is to optimize the change process. Can be longevity, can be a different type of process that you want to have in your life. Through your methodology, you can change faster, better, and with more long-lasting effect.
And we focus on health because of our background, and on longevity, on fitness because of our background. But our main focus is not the, let's say, the diagnostic part, because we don't do that. Certainly not at the level that you can do it in a clinic. But it's more, how do you make the recommendations that you received, maybe from Clinique La Prairie, a program that you can really adopt for the rest of your life? So that's the key of the focus of our work, to really help people implement this change of lifestyle.
Long-lasting change. Yeah. Filippo, let's go. Last question. Let's go a little bit philosophical, because there is another thing that we share, me and you. And we always say that if they would give us 50 years more in our life, a lot of people, they would simply don't know what to do in these 50 years. I was Saturday in front of 100 students, and of course I always ask them, how many of you have a purpose? Which is very clear, and very few, of course, raise hands. What is for you a life well lived?
Well, it's a very good question. I think it does overlap a lot with having a sense of scope, a sense of purpose. I mean, I think you have to live really well, you have to have this energy inside and feel that what you are doing is somehow useful. I believe this is also, a cultural aspect. I think this should be something that we bring also in business, in companies more often, to make people feel that they are useful, okay? So for sure, that is one aspect. Another aspect that for me is extremely important is family, relationships, okay? Friendship. I think it is difficult to imagine a life well lived without strong relationships, people that you can share ideas and share your purpose with them, that's very, very important. And then, I also have to say, although maybe it doesn't sound so scientific, but I also have to say that becoming more familiar with exploring the spiritual aspects of life. So what happens afterwards, and contemplating this aspect, and having the capacity also to, this is also an exercise, memento mori of the Latins. I mean, it's this idea of having the capacity to keep clearly in your mind that your time is limited. you know. And I have the impression that many people live their life without ever thinking about this, and then they reach the end of their life and they are shocked that it's going to end. And they find themselves maybe with many regrets for the things they didn't do, for the words they didn't say. So I think the idea that life is limited is truly the secret to understand how precious it is.
True.
You know, if you forget that, everything becomes granted, and this incredible magical taste suddenly disappears, you know, because...
And instead we could say from granted to gratitude.
And I think gratitude, yes, is an extremely important emotion. I think it's a true, you know, antidote to stress, to anger, to fear, is to be grateful of what we have and to be grateful of simply the experience of life, which is a true miracle.
Yeah.
You know, the life of each of us. You know, we say science is answering to the how questions, but it's not answering to the why questions. And so we should keep that in mind.
Thank you, Filippo. It was
Thank you so
beautiful to have you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thanks.